this video, we'll be covering how to bring the character from a standing stationary position into the first step of the walk. However, it's not always necessary that you start your scene with the character in a standing stationary position. In most cases, it's better to start the scene with the character on his first contact, so you start in the middle of the action. However, for example purposes, we're using this character starting from the scene in a standing pose. If, for instance, your character comes to a stop in your scene, and then you need to start again to take another step, that is where the information covered in this video will come in handy. So let's start with how to get the character starting in his walk. From our standing pose, we're going to need to anticipate, and then we're going to need to shift his weight before the character can pick his foot up and take his first step. These are essentially going to fall into the same rhythm as the other walk poses that we create. So if we're going from contact to contact, still the same timing, see, is 13 frames from the standing pose to this contact pose here. So I'm going to split that in half and create a passing pose. So my first passing pose is going to be halfway between the standing pose and that first contact pose, so it's going to be here at frame 7. Now for the first passing pose, what we need is for the character to push off and shift his weight. It's not treated exactly like the other passing poses where the foot is lifted up off the ground. In this case, we just need the foot to be pushing up so that it pushes the character to start shifting his weight before the foot can actually lift up off the ground. So since this is the foot that's going to be moving, it's going to be the foot that's actually pushing up because he needs to shift his weight over onto the red foot. So let's go and take this and push his weight shift, and let's make sure to zero out any channels that we don't need right now. 0 and 0. And 0. And because this is a passing pose and he's going to be pushing up off of that foot, shifting his weight over here, we want to make sure that rotate Z tilts the hips this way. Before we lower this down some. This foot is going to have lift heel because again it's going to be pushing up and pushing off. So it's pushing the character's weight over onto this leg. Let's go and grab our 3 back controls, zero them out to start, and then let's check our front ortho view. Make sure that our character's going to be in balance as necessary. So we want to counter rotate our back controls. If we have our cog going in the negative here, our 3 back controls will be positive. And then we take our neck, and it's going to counter what the back controls are doing. So to keep the head level and facing straight forward, it's going to counter and come back negative. Now the arms, depending on where the standing pose was, should be breaking down to get into the actual first contact pose. So in this case, this arm I'm going to have start coming down away from the character's face. While this arm may drag off to the side a little bit as the character shifts his weight. And let's go ahead and key that pose. So now we go from our standing pose here to the character pushing off, and then we'll have our contact. Okay, so that's our first passing pose. So what about our first down pose? Well, the first down pose is going to act as the anticipation. it's going to be when the character either squashes down, or maybe even in some cases he may spring up. But before he actually shifts his weight, he needs to actually anticipate before his weight is fully over onto this foot. So our down pose, or our anticipation, is going to be on frame 4. And I'm going to squash my character down here. And much like doing the other down poses, we can adjust it in the graph editor. But we're going to keep both these feet flat on the ground as the character squashes down. As the character is squashing down, to get a little opposing action in here, I'm going to have the hand come up off of the head. And same thing with this hand, I may have it flare out a little bit. And let's key that so we can see what we're going to edit in our graph editor here. Again, favoring my extremes, as you can see in Rotate Z, it starts to come down and favors the extreme here. Cool. Rotate Y, right now it's flatlining. I'm going to pull that up so it favors the extreme there. Translate X to side, pull it down so it favors the extreme as well. And then move up the rest of our body. So there we have some squash down. Again, we can always adjust this. If you want, maybe, since we had some Rotate X in there, start having it progress. coming down to translate X there. So squash, passing pose. Now we have to do the up pose. And in this case, up pose is very similar to the up pose in the rest of the walk, but for the first step, it's just going to be the first time where the foot actually does lift up off of the ground. So in this case, our up pose is going to have the foot up off of the ground, again dragging the toe down, as the supporting foot has lift heel, and the character starts to lean into this step. Now you may find as you're continuing to play around with the arms that you want to go and handle it more straight ahead, adjusting the positioning of the arms, getting towards the down pose from the starting pose, because that's your next extreme value, and that's fine. Again, the arms, once you have all the poses in, it's usually easier to handle them straight ahead rather than pose to pose. And key that. And once again, adjust our curves in the graph editor. So here we've created the first step for our walk. Make some adjustments to it. Make sure that the supporting leg is straight on that up pose. Check our side ortho view. We want to make sure that the character kind of flows into that first step and translate Z in his forward momentum there. So that's about halfway between the passing and the contacts. Cool. He starts to come forward there and eases into the walk there. So again, first we want to create your first passing pose, which is going to have the character push off of the foot that's going to be taking a step and have him shift his weight onto the supporting leg. Then you can create your anticipation, which is the first down pose essentially, where the character is going to squash and is blending into that first passing pose. Then you can create your up pose, where the character is going to lift his foot before going into the first contact.